The Detroit Tigers season is over. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, October 14th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Unfortunately, if you did have a fantastic weekend, it was not due to your Detroit Tigers. They officially are eliminated from the MLB postseason after a 7-3 loss in Game 5 on Saturday. This season ends with an 86-76 record, a playoff berth for the first time in 10 years, a playoff series win for the first time in 11 years, a sweep, and an ALDS that was pushed to 5 games. The final game of the season is always a tough one. Always a tough one. The season is officially over for the Detroit Tigers, and that is always a tough pill to swallow, whether you're losing 114 games like they were 5 years ago, or whether you're losing in the postseason. I've seen a lot of different reactions surrounding this loss, and I really think that all ends of the spectrum of emotion there are very justifiable, right? Like I've seen, a lot of frustration, and I think that's totally fair. To be completely honest with you, I would use the phrase like they blew this series. This was a completely fumbled ALDS. The Tigers had a lead going into the 7th inning of Game 4 at home with a 2-1 series lead in a best-of-5 series. They were 8 or 9 outs away from advancing to the ALCS. And home game in Game 4, like I said, you had Skubal going in Game 5. I had said on this show going into Game 4 that because the Tigers won Game 3, they were in the driver's seat of the series because they were. And I am unbelievably frustrated and disappointed that this team fumbled that opportunity. They were in the driver's seat, and they still lost the series. And that's incredibly frustrating. I also think that being happy and optimistic about this season is also incredibly fair. This was a team that was almost 10 games under 500 at one point this year in like post-deadline, sold at the deadline. The number we all hear all the time is 0.2% chance of making the postseason. And not only did they make the postseason, but they swept the Astros, who have been a lock to make the ALCS for 6 years now, in Houston. And the ALDS was an unbelievably competitive series, although you lost. So I'm really feeling both of these emotions very strongly. I'm recording this on Sunday night, so I am not... I didn't want to record immediately following Saturday because I felt like that was going to be really raw, and I wanted to gather my thoughts a little bit, but I'm still feeling both of these emotions a lot. This was an amazing season and was the most fun that many of us have had in about a decade watching this team. The run, the story, the performances individually, This was an incredible season that also should instill a lot of faith and optimism and just hope in the future and the direction that this organization is headed, right? But the ending of this story was a huge disappointment and exposed a lot of the flaws that this team still has. And even with those flaws, some of it is just inexcusable, which is why it was so frustrating. And I am truly disappointed and heartbroken about the way that they went out. So let's start with that. All right, we got eliminated. We'll start with this is the makeshift kind of what went wrong of Game 5, right? Like this was, why was this so disappointing? We'll cover that emotion, and then at the end of the show, we'll cover the more positive emotion about how awesome this season truly was and how optimistic I think I am and a lot of people are about this team going forward. But this was a blown opportunity, and I think that Skubal being human was certainly something that went wrong this weekend. 6 innings, 6 hits, 5 earned runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 1 home run against, and it was obviously the big grand slam. I didn't think he looked bad. He was actually dominating for the first 4 innings. He was pretty much unhittable, like we are so used to him being. In that moment there, right? Bases loaded. You got a chance to get out of this inning. You hit a batter. Okay. It's J-Ram. So a lot of people are like, I'm kind of not the worst thing in the world anyway. We'll take 1 run against to not face J-Ram. But you hit J-Ram. That's a run. Then you give up a grand slam. My only issue was the pitch call. And it's really easy for me to say that from my couch, 2 days later as a spectator. I fully understand that. And this guy has won Cy Young, and is going to win Cy Young, I should say. Jake Rogers has caught every game. This pitching coaching staff has done a great job this year. They are very, very, all of them, very incredible at their jobs. But Lane Thomas is a really aggressive hitter. And I felt like in that moment, the Tigers' mindset was, okay, well, we just plunked somebody. So let's just start off with a fastball, right over the heart of the plate to get up 0-1 on this guy, because he'll definitely be taking because, just hit somebody. And that was not the case. And Lane Thomas is a very aggressive swinger, a very aggressive first pitch swinger. And he has been all series. And he's done damage early in counts all series. Got a groovable pitch, and the Tigers season is over. That was really the only issue I had with Skubal, was just the pitch to Lane Thomas. All the rest was pretty understandable, excusable, or just straight up dominant. And here we are. As far as Cleveland goes, I think there have been some players that have kind of thrown their hats in the ring of, rivals or players that this fan base is not going to be a fan of anytime soon. Steven Kwan ended with a dang near, or maybe even better than, 600 batting average in the ALDS. The Detroit Tigers could not get Steven Kwan out for anything. You could have offered our pitchers $1 billion. It wasn't happening. He had no fear going to 0-2 counts because he knew that he was just going to put the ball in play eventually anyway. He's a really, really good hitter. He has been for a while. He was an all-star this year. He had more walks than strikeouts in the regular season. I love watching him hit. Hate watching him hit against the Detroit Tigers. David Fry, obviously, with a couple of big moments in this series. Lane Thomas with the big knockout blow. And, Rocchio also had a phenomenal series for them, hitting in the 9 slot for most. And I just wonder if any of them, this is just an open-ended kind of fun question. Well, not fun, kind of painful. Did anybody in this series surpass J-Ram as far as your dislike? Because J-Ram's the ultimate Tiger killer, right? We've talked about that for years. He destroys the Detroit Tigers. And a lot of people, he gets booed whenever he's in Comerica. A lot of people are very anti-J-Ram because of that. He's a great dude and awesome baseball player, but just tough when he crushes your franchise specifically for so long. So I'm wondering if any of those guys that I just named maybe surpassed J-Ram because of this one series, or if J-Ram's just kind of in a, area or even galaxy of his own, which is also very understandable. Let's keep the ball rolling here. Got a few more players. Got to talk about the pitching, the bullpen specifically in Game 5, and then we'll talk about the offensive shortcomings that were very apparent in this series and game specifically as well. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Ibotta. Are you taking that dream vacation but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases. You can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn on hundreds of items from groceries, beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner that you have been craving. It's time to join over 50 million users when you use Ibotta to earn cash back every time you shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta and using code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store to use code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the show. The Tiger season is over. This show is all year round. So we will, in fact, if this is your first season joining or you just picked us up in the postseason, I don't go anywhere. We are still here 5 days a week going forward, talking about the Tigers. We have a lot of conversations. Like I said, we'll kind of roadmap that out a little bit later towards the end of the show, talking about what went wrong and kind of the pessimistic side of this weekend. You know, the bullpen is obviously a really big talking point and has been this entire run. Will Vest, Tyler Holton, Beau Brieske, you know, they've been dang near perfect for the entire start of the postseason and then weren't. And you know, for as much credit as they've been given in those really high intensity moments with your back against the wall, you're going to lean on who you have been leaning on all season and all of this run. And Vest gave up a run. Holton gave up a run and had an ERA over 9 in the postseason because he got popped in the mouth a few times against Cleveland. And Beau Brieske in Game 4. Jason Foley wasn't used very much. A lot of people scratching their head. I think it was the right move. Jason Foley is a pitch-to-contact pitcher, and Cleveland is the ultimate pitch-to-contact neutralizer. They just put everything in play. So I really had no issue not going to Foley there. If there was a situation where they really needed a ground ball, I probably would have still gone to him, but I didn't have too much issue with not using Foley in really throughout this entire series. I thought that it kind of made sense. But the fact of the matter is, you've been relying on your bullpen so much, and they couldn't keep the game close when it mattered most there. In games 4 and, well, mostly just game 5, but in games 4 and 5, obviously, Brieske giving up the home run as well. But the main event of the evening for me, and the continued storyline throughout really the whole ALDS, was the Tigers' inability to hit with runners in scoring position. They went 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position in game 5, 1 for 11 in game 4, 2 for 10 in game 3. That is an absolute atrocity. That is horrific. And they were winning games by keeping scores low, incredible bullpen work, Tarik Skubal throwing zeros, and the offense doing just enough. And when you're in the postseason, eventually that's not going to be good enough. Your bullpen's going to give up runs at some point. Cleveland, great example. Best regular season bullpen we've seen in ages. Those guys gave up some runs this series, but their offense was able to respond. Not that it's a high-powered offense over there, don't get me wrong, but they did more than we did. They did more than the Tigers were able to do. Playoff pitching is a completely different animal, and you're going up against teams' best starters, their best bullpen arms, every single inning. You're going up against some of the best that team has to offer. And the difference in this series was a couple of big hits that Detroit just couldn't provide. Riley Green had a tough postseason. Matt Vierling had a brutal ALDS. Colt Keith, a really tough postseason. Spencer Torkelson came alive there in Game 5, to his credit, but had a really rough postseason. Trey Sweeney, strikeout machine in the playoffs. Skubal and the bullpen didn't hold their 0 ERAs that they had, which is ridiculous to like demand from not only one person, from like 4 or 5 players. And the offense wasn't good enough. Their run totals the entire postseason, okay? Every single game, the entire postseason. 3-5-0, 3-3-4-3. That is an average of a little bit under 3.5 runs scored per game. It's actually almost exactly 3 1/3 runs scored a game. In the regular season, 3 1/3 runs a game would have slotted you at 29th in baseball. The only team that would have been better than is the Chicago White Sox, who lost 121 games. That level of offensive production, you can be mad at Skubal, which I think is kind of ridiculous, but like, if you want to be mad at him for giving up the grand slam, if you want to point fingers at the bullpen for not continuing to remain perfect, I think that's a bit unfair, but that is that, everybody views the game differently. If that's how you view it, then so be it. That's the beautiful part of these discussions and the game of baseball is there's a million different ways to view the sport. But the equivalent of the 29th best offense in baseball rolling out there every playoff game isn't going to cut it consistently. And that was their Achilles heel more than anything else. Had a lead in the final 3 innings of Game 4 at home with the future Cy Young winner pitching in Game 5 as insurance and still lost the series. And that stings, and it's a massive disappointment. But this season as a whole has given so much optimism to this fan base and to myself, and was a success, especially when you compare it to preseason expectations. I'm not a big fan of saying anything short of a World Series ring is a success. I think that's why 30 teams should play the game, and I don't want to like reward falling short. But given where this team has been over the last decade, this is an objective, massive step in the right direction. And you had so many positives. You had so many positives to come out of this year. You had a lot of negatives too. And we'll talk about that. We got a whole winter, you and me. We got a whole winter to talk about the holes on this team and what we need to fill and what this roster needs to have happen to it. But there was so much good that came out of this season that, you know what? Disappointing ending to the season considered, it's really hard to be too upset about the 2024 Tigers season. Tarik Skubal took that step forward and truly became one of the best pitchers on the planet, and I think should, and I think probably will, I'll say probably, win the Cy Young unanimously in the American League. That's a guy that is going to be a long-term piece for your Detroit Tigers. Reese Olson, when he was healthy, took a huge step forward. He was a guy, you got to remember, preseason expectations for Olson, we were talking about him even making the opening day rotation, right? Matt Manning was most people had slotted in to make the rotation over Reese Olson. How ridiculous that looks now in hindsight. He had a fantastic year. Then obviously the bullpen is going to be a huge talking point. We'll elaborate on that huge talking point right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game and you check out the latest stats or view live play-by-play, you can do it all in the same place that you place your bets. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of the Tigers season. The next time we talk, we will be in off-season mode. Got a lot to discuss there. We will talk about that a little bit later. We'll kind of end the show by road mapping the off-season a little bit. But we're talking about the reasons for optimism and the reason why this season was why this weekend, while it sucked, there's still a huge silver lining there. And I think the bullpen is obviously going to be one of the biggest reasons that you could argue this season was a success. This was a huge question mark in the middle of this season, not only going into the year, right? This bullpen kind of had the roller coaster thing where the beginning of the season, they were fantastic, right? April Tigers bullpen, there will be tales written about it that we will pass down from generation to generation to our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids, right? Then in the middle of the year, it was brutal. And there was no high leverage reliever. There was nobody you trusted consistently in high leverage. Do you remember that? It lasted like months. It was just the cycle. We made fun of it on the show. It was the never-ending cycle of somebody does really well in low leverage, then gets promoted to high leverage, and completely is awful. And then the cycle starts over and over and over, and everybody was struggling. And then from the trade deadline on, they were absolutely phenomenal. Tyler Holton, Will Vest, Beau Brieske, all incredible seasons. Beau Brieske didn't even start the season on the Tigers' major league roster. He did not make the team out of camp. He was not on the opening day team. And I think more than maybe any individual confidence or individual that I can mention here, I think one of the biggest takeaways is just that there is now an underlying faith in this organization to develop and get bullpen production from anywhere internally. Anybody they call up, anybody they're high on, anybody they think could be effective. I think there's now a very, not even some wavering belief, like a strong belief in Feder, Lund, and Nieves, and this coaching staff, in this organization, top to bottom, has really instilled this confidence in pitching development. And that's a huge win for this year. Jackson Job's debut wasn't the prettiest of postseason performances, but I think that there's now an underlying belief that he's going to be pitching in the majors at some point next year, if not making the team on opening day. We'll see how that story develops throughout the winter, but I think seeing him was really cool as well. And then the offensive side of the ball, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Riley Green had a really good regular season. Little streaky, still had some injury stuff going on. He's still so young. I really do think Riley Green is primed to continue taking steps forward. Obviously was an all-star this year, deserved it. We have a guy that you can put in the middle of the lineup throughout the entire regular season and feel really good about it. And that is what we wanted him to become when he was playing in, single A and double A. Parker Meadows might be the storyline of the season on the offensive side of the ball. He's a guy that got sent down, and we were all like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to sign a center fielder in the offseason. Like, this is brutal. He comes back, and now I don't think there's a single person on the planet that's like, oh, the Tigers have a question mark in center field next year. Don't think that person exists. Parker Meadows is Superman and is going to be a key contributor for this Tigers team for hopefully many, many years to come. Wensiel Perez, a guy that was on nobody's radar to be an impact player this year, took a huge step forward, was a key contributor to this Tigers team. And then even Colt Keith, right? Got off to the really slow start, obviously was not too effective in the postseason. I'm not saying it was all sunshine and rainbows, but the defense got a lot better. And there was a solid stretch there in the middle of the summer where he was one of your better hitters. And so I think that is a huge, huge thing for this team going forward, is going to be Colt Keith's continued development and just how much of a fixture he is going to be in this lineup going forward. And that's not everything. And like I said, we got a whole winter. We'll do a whole show about what went right this season, what went wrong this season. Those will be shows that will be in your eyes and ears soon. We'll do way more, but I think it's just important to remember, like, every team that goes through a rebuild has a statement year where they kind of announce, like, we're here. And everybody has that year. The following year really shows you what kind of team that team actually is and how successful that core actually could end up being. It's about keeping it. It's about sustainability. And I think this year gave some confidence to this fan base, confidence that this group and this core can win if they are surrounded by the right pieces going forward. This is one of the most important off seasons in years for the Detroit Tigers. We're talking about how to be a playoff team again, which just brings a smile to my face. That is an absolutely beautiful and wonderful thing, man. Okay, so those are kind of all the emotions I'm feeling, right? I am dead inside because the Tigers lost a playoff series, and that is absolutely heartbreaking. And they did so in very frustrating and heartbreaking fashion. But it's impossible for me, at least, to be too down when I know how unlikely it was to even be here, how exceeding of expectations it took to even be here, and how much optimism a lot of people are going to have about this team going forward. What a rough weekend for Detroit sports. The Lions won, but Hutchinson's probably done for the year. Tigers get eliminated. The Red Wings won. They won their first game. That's good. Cam Talbot, man, shutout ball, shutout puck. If you're a Wings fan, I also host Locked On Red Wings. Me and Brian and I will talk about the weekend and the Wings' first win of the year over there. Off-season mode. We are officially in off-season mode, everybody. And I hope that you will stick with us through this off-season. This was obviously a really fun run, and the team had a lot of eyes on them. Like I said, this is going to be one of the more important off-seasons in recent memory of Tigers baseball. There are so many conversations that we're going to have here 5 days a week until I think it's about January, maybe late December. We go down holiday season and whatnot around the new year. We go down to 3 a week, but we're still here 3 days a week, even through that period. And then when pitchers and catchers report in February, back to 5, and then business as usual going ahead there. But even from now until the end of December, we will still be here 5 days a week. A lot of fun conversations to be had. Holes on the roster, right? Ton of question marks there. The free agency class, trade possibilities, Arizona Fall League we're in the thick of it. We haven't even had time to talk about it because the Tigers actually made the postseason this year. I don't know if you're aware. Starting pitching question marks, right? What is the rotation going to look like? Javi, the shortstop situation in general. There's so many conversations to be had. We're going to do deep dives on every single player on the Major League roster, talk about their 2024 season and kind of what to expect from them this offseason if they're going to be back. So much to break down, so much to discuss. And I thank you all so much for continuing to tune in. I know inevitably listenership will go down a little bit just because some people were along for the ride and thought the run was really fun. And I don't tell anybody how to be a fan ever. You do whatever you enjoy in this one life that we all have. But I do think it's awesome to know that going into the offseason, that this show is going to have a ton of new listeners that were not a part of last offseason, or were not even a part of the community we've had here and have grown here at the beginning of the regular season this year. Right. And so the offseason it's long at sometimes, and it's always a treat to get through. And we all wish that we were playing baseball, and probably starting tomorrow, I'll probably already be missing baseball and counting the days until pitchers and catchers report and whatnot. But this is going to be a really, really fun offseason. So I look forward to hearing from all of you and continuing the dialogue and conversation and comments and everything that we have here surrounding this beautiful team that we have all bonded over and love. I thank you all so much. This show, because the team did so well, I don't think I really had anything to do with it, but because the team did so well, this was the biggest season that this show has ever seen. And that is obviously entirely because of each and every one of you. Even if you don't like me at all and are just listening because you hate listen and want to call me an idiot, that is more than fine. You are entitled to that. I just appreciate anybody listening to this show at all. The Tigers are my biggest passion on this planet, more than anything. There are very few things, right? The people close to me and a couple other things, and that's about it. There are very few things that I love more than this organization and this baseball team, and finding a group of people that is as passionate about this team as me and wants to, tune in every day and have these conversations with me every day is just the biggest blessing that I have, could ever dream of. And it's really talking about ball and talking about the Tigers specifically is really all I've ever wanted to do. And it's been a heck of a road. It's been a grind. There's been a lot of scary moments at times in terms of, my my I don't know, ending up here, I guess I'll say. But I'm so unbelievably thankful for anybody who has ever listened to this show. And the Tigers being good again has just, I think, opened the door to a whole lot of new people to have these awesome experiences and to have these awesome conversations with. So I think I'm rambling and repeating myself, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I appreciate you all greatly, genuinely. This is being a part of your day every day is the biggest honor I could possibly ask for, legitimately. And you are all what allows me to do this every day. So thank you. Let's have a fun off season. Okay. It hurts right now. I'm in a lot of pain. Probably the tone of this episode was not the preppiest and not maybe the most enthusiastic. Still sorting out my sad emotions of getting eliminated from the postseason, but we're going to have a lot of fun this offseason. And there's a lot of really big picture conversations that I think we need to have, because it is very far from a guarantee that this team is able to do what they did this year again next year. So they need to do some things very correctly and walk that line to get back here. It's all about sustaining it now. Let's have an off season. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. You're all the best. I love you all dearly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.